In the 1950s, from behind the Iron Curtain, a team emerged that reinvented the way football was played. Boasting some of the world's finest players, Hungary were once the greatest team ever seen.
The Hungarians were a revolution.
We introduced a new style that surprised everyone.
At that time, we were the best in the world.
My only wish is to play football. I hope FIFA will permit me to do so I can carry on with my career.
March 1957, and Ferenc Puskás, iconic leader of the Hungarian Golden Team, cuts a lonely figure, banned from playing professional football. Just 4 months previously, Puskás had fled the political turmoil of his country. A nationwide revolt had forced Hungary's communist government to collapse, but within days the Soviet Union had crushed the rebellion. Some 2,500 Hungarians died in the uprising, and more than 200,000 escaped abroad. It proved to be one of the darkest episodes in the country's history, and forced the dissolution of their greatest ever football team. From the moment football left England and spread across the world, Hungary excelled at the beautiful game. A hugely popular domestic league produced a generation of young, talented players, and in 1938 they reached the World Cup final, losing 4-2 to Italy. But the Second World War interrupted the rise of the Hungarian game. Much of the country was devastated fighting the Nazis, and Hungary and its football emerged much changed.
Hungary came out of the war in a pretty rough state. It became a heavily Stalinist state. It was full of torture, imprisonment, arrests late at night, and nobody knew from 1 minute to the next whether their lives was likely to continue or not. So it was probably one of the worst places in the world to be living at the time.
The Hungarian communists who came to power in 1948 recognized that they had a fantastic generation of sporting talent, and they took steps to turn that to their political advantage. All they had to do was to continue with this strong generation of players and create the necessary conditions for them to thrive. They did it, and they reaped the rewards.
The communist government structured the league around the ambitions of the national side. Gustav Sebeś, a committed communist, was installed as national coach and given free rein to build a team in his own image.
In late 1949, Gustav Sebeś decided he wanted the national team to be based around just 1 or 2 clubs. So the creation of Kispest Honvéd is interesting, in that the government moved everything, including sports clubs, into state hands.
When power moved from right to left, as it did during that and over that Second World War period, then clubs which were nobodies, like the little working class Kispest Club, became Kispest Honvéd, the army club of the Socialist Republic of Hungary. If you're running the army team, you can more or less have any player you want. The vast bulk, 3/4, 80% of that golden squad team were playing together week after week for Kispest Honvéd.
Honvéd provided numerous players for the national team, amongst them Captain Puskás, József Bozsik, Zoltán Csibor, and goalkeeper Gyula Grosic. They dominated Hungarian football and replicated that form with the national side, establishing themselves as one of the best teams in Europe.
These were unpolished working class diamonds who illustrated how the socialist system could identify them, train them, and produce the greatest players in the world.
The 1952 Olympics in Helsinki would provide Hungary with the platform to advance their growing reputation. Undefeated in more than 2 years, Puskás and his teammates were favourites for the gold medal.
During the Olympics, we had one very tough game against Romania, but managed to win it 2-1. Then we scored 7 against the Turks, 3 against the Italians, and 6 against the reigning Olympic champion Sweden on the way through to the final against Yugoslavia.
At the time, Yugoslavia were one of the best teams in Europe, if not the world. But we beat them 2-0 after a very difficult match. Our golden team, after winning in Helsinki, was then considered among the very best teams in the world.
National heroes back home, the following summer Hungary claimed the Central European Championship. They beat Italy 3-0 in the final match in Rome, once again displaying their innovative and exciting brand of football. The Hungarians lined up in a new 4-2-4 formation, with everyone in the team encouraged to support the attack.
When we attacked, everyone attacked. The midfielders moved forward behind the attackers, and the defenders followed up behind the midfield. It was seamless. If the opposition cleared the ball, there were no empty spaces, and so we were able to quickly win the ball back and start another attack.
Božič and Puskás and Hidegkuti, they were the computers. Like a boxer. First couple of rounds, let's see, what's this guy got? Okay, I've worked him out now, bing, 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 all over. They could, on the run, work out how to beat a team.
Sebes told us the tactics in the morning, and then when we played in the afternoon, the captain ran the show. After a quarter of an hour of the match, Puskás would notice their left back was weak and order us all to push down to the right. Or if the opposing team was making headway down the right, he would tell us all to push over to that side. That's how it worked.
In November 1953, Hungary were invited to play England at Wembley. Never beaten at home by a team from outside the British Isles, England considered their players technically and tactically superior. The match was eagerly anticipated. The inventors of the game up against the highest-ranked team in the world.
The English singled this match out from the usual international games we played. I mean, even before the game had begun, the English were calling it the match of the century.
England had probably one of its greatest collections of players at the time. Stanley Matthews, Tom Finney, Billy Wright, Alf Ramsey. It was no weak England team.
In front of a crowd of more than 100,000, the stage was set for the most anticipated game in recent memory. Hungary got off to the perfect start, going 1-0 up in the first minute through Nandor Hidegkuti. England equalised, but by the 27th minute, the visitors were 4-1 up, their hosts totally bamboozled by the Hungarians' new style of play.
Hungary were a brilliant side. Don't throw it away at all. They got great players and they could play. I mean, Puskás was a great player. But Hidegkuti, one of the things that we hadn't contended with, Hidegkuti was a deep line centre forward, which we hadn't contended with at all.
The number 9, usually in England the big number 9, was the cutting edge of the attack. He was supposed to have a couple of wingers to either side of him, a midfield behind, and of course the sort of famous WM formation, which had been around for, 60 or 70 years. The Hungarians broke that formation, and in doing so, they pulled their great playmaker the number 9, Hidegkuti, into midfield where he was virtually alone. And around him, anyone could play anywhere.
The goal that best illustrated this new tactic was Puskas's first.
There's the outside left C ball, right over on the right wing. Oh, a lovely goal!
Puskas, the goal he got here at Wembley, if I've got a penny for every time Pathy News, BBC have shown that with me on my backside. But a great friend of mine called Geoffrey Green, who wrote for the Times, this is how he phrased it: a long low ball to the right of the English penalty area to Puskas. Wright came in for the intended tackle. Puskas stopped the ball with the sole of his left foot, pulled it back, turned, and hit an unstoppable shot into the roof of the net past a helpless Merrick. Wright, meanwhile, carried on for the intended tackle like a fire engine going to the wrong fire in a hurry. That just shows it, descriptive. And I was on my backside in front of 100,000 people. That was not very nice.
They seem to play football as the Harlem Globetrotters play basketball, this Hungarian side.
More was to follow. Hidegkuti completed his hat-trick to make it 6-2.
Puskás. Hidegkuti, it's a goal!
England pulled one back before the final whistle, but it made little difference. They'd been totally outclassed by the magical Magyars.
This was a shockwave of considerable proportions, but it wasn't like a 1-0 scrape, was it? You know, it was 6-3, and the Hungarians took their foot off the accelerator in the second half to not embarrass, because they were so well-mannered.
We knew we'd been beaten by, a great side, but we'd been humiliated in front of our, so their heads were down. But you got another game to play. But what we all said, wasn't it great to play against a side of that of caliber?
Thousands of people wanted to greet the team that had beaten England. We got on the train and stopped at every station from the Austrian border onwards. We had to stop, because at every station there were so many people on the platform, waving and wanting to shake someone's hand.
Back in Budapest, the Golden Squad was received by huge crowds. The government was keen to capitalise on the success of the national side. It saw their victories as a vindication of football's progress under communism.
In a political system that suppressed everybody, the football stars were an exception. They found housing more easily, they travelled abroad, and they lived better than anyone else.
6 months later, and just 3 weeks prior to the 1954 World Cup, England arrived in Budapest, hoping to avenge their earlier defeat. Over 1 million Hungarians applied for match tickets, and officially just over 100,000 people crammed into the newly constructed Nepstadion, where they witnessed England humiliated once again.
For the return game here in Hungary, England came for 7 days and left after losing 7-1. In the 6 months between the two matches, they hadn't analysed our style at all. The English just couldn't accept that we Hungarians were better than them. They simply put the first match down to a bad day at the office.
7-1 remains the worst defeat suffered by an England team in their history, and that stretches back over 150 years. Puskás said they could have scored 10, but were wasteful with their chances. This was the last major official international match in Hungary before the 1954 World Cup, and I think everyone in the country was convinced that the team would be crowned world champions at that tournament.
Now favourites for the world title, Hungary turned their attention to matters in Switzerland. They began the World Cup in style, beating South Korea 9-0, Sandor Kocsis scoring a hat-trick. 3 days later, they thrashed West Germany, Kocsis this time scoring 4. But there was one cloud on the horizon. An injury to Puskás following a Werner Liebrich foul meant the Hungarian captain's World Cup was in jeopardy.
The instructions the Germans were given was to play much harder against Puskás than they normally would. At the start of the second half against West Germany, a match we won comfortably 8-3, Puskás suffered a very serious ankle injury.
Liebrich's name became a swear word in Hungary. He was the ultimate bad guy. Fathers would use his name to threaten their children, and a whole generation of kids were warned not to be like that terrible German footballer who ruined Ferenc Puskás's World Cup.
Without Puskás, Hungary faced Brazil in the quarter-finals. The match would go down in history as the Battle of Bern. 3 players were sent off. There was a fight in the tunnel at the finish. But Hungary won through 4-2.
The roughest match of my life was against the Brazilians at the World Cup. There were plenty of aggressive fouls. I was on the wrong end of some challenges that nearly finished with me on the wrong side of the advertising hoarding. Then came the Uruguayans, which I still say was the greatest match of my life. Your passes had to be inch perfect. We were leading 2-0 until the 33rd minute of the second half. They scored 1, then equalized in the final moments, and so we went into extra time. But 2 crosses from Budaj and 2 headers from Kosic meant we won the match 4-2.
We played against Uruguay in Lausanne and then had to travel back to our hotel. The 2 periods of extra time and a local celebration they put on for us after the game meant that we were late for our train. In the end, we got back to our hotel at about 4 on Friday morning, and the final was on Sunday.
With heavy rain falling throughout the day in Bern, Puskás, despite not being 100% fit, led his team out for the World Cup final. Their opponents were West Germany, much improved since the start of the tournament. Their coach, Sepp Herberger, selected only 5 of the players who played in the 8-3 humiliation.
Sepp Herberger had seen the 6-3 match against England. I was with my friend Rudi Michel, a German news reporter, when he spoke to Herberger at the World Cup. When they spoke, Rudi Michel said to him, "Did you see the 6 goals Puskás' team scored against England?" Herberger responded, "Yes, of course I saw them. Absolutely outstanding. But did you see that the Hungarians conceded 3 goals? We'll get 3 goals too."
As they had in every game of the tournament, Hungary raced into a 2-goal lead. Puskás scoring the first, then laying on the second. But within 9 minutes, the Germans had scored twice to draw level.
If there is one thing that we've learned from the history of football, it's that messing about and getting complacent is a capital error. Zoltán Csibor once said that if you make a German dig his own grave, he'll dig it, then jump out and push you in.
Hungary rallied, Hidekuti hitting a post, and Csibor having a shot cleared off the line. But with just 6 minutes left, Helmut Rahn fired in his second of the match, and West Germany were world champions.
I don't want to make excuses for ourselves or lessen the glory of the German team. But the truth is that this match was seriously affected by 2 very bad decisions from the officials, because Puskás equalized in the last minute, only for the goal to be incorrectly given offside, and the second German goal was scored illegally. That's how the Germans won.
Everyone was crying. It was only natural. I cried at the microphone. We just couldn't believe that what happened could have happened to our beloved team. The most touching scene came at the end of the match, when Puskás went over to the German captain, Fritz Walter, bowed his head, shook his hand and said, "Congratulations." There couldn't have been a more dignified way to lose the World Cup.
The World Cup final was Hungary's only defeat in more than 4 years of football. And despite that disappointment, they soon set about restoring faith in the national side.
After the World Cup, we went on an 18-game unbeaten run, and our confidence returned. That showed everyone that we hadn't forgotten how to play football.
In September 1956, the Hungarians travelled to Moscow to take on the Soviet Union. Never beaten at home, many expected the Soviets to win comfortably, but a solitary Zoltán Csibor goal saw Hungary end that run and did little to improve the two countries' strained political relationship.
Russia was hated by most Hungarians, in fact, an occupying power. The atmosphere between those two nations was pretty taut. And nothing could be sweeter than taking their pants down in Moscow and giving them a good spanking. And that's what the Hungarians did. I think there's a certain coincidence about that victory in Moscow and the revolution. That sense that a small nation can overcome a large one. It probably added a little gas to the tank.
Within a month, the Hungarian people had risen to challenge the Soviet-backed government at home. But in November 1956, the Red Army invaded. The Hungarians bravely held the Russians for 7 days before the might of the Soviet army crushed the rebellion.
The entire Golden Squad was outside of the country when the Russians invaded. Puskás and half a dozen of the others, they thought they would sit around and have a think about this for a while. Did they want to go home? Could they get their families out? What going home might mean?
With the communists back in power, thousands were imprisoned and thousands more fled. Amongst them more than 20,000 athletes and some 12,000 registered football players. Hungarian football would never be the same again.
The revolutionary period did a lot of harm to football in Hungary. The entire national youth team defected when abroad at a tournament in Belgium, as did Sándor Kocsis, Zoltán Csibor and captain Ferenc Puskás, three major players who never again played for the national team.
There were people who thought that was the wrong thing to do, either for patriotic reasons or for political reasons. And I'm sure Puskás felt that criticism. In fact, of course, he did not return to Hungary for 20-odd years.
In 1981, Ferenc Puskás finally came home. 25 years on from the breakup of the Golden Squad, an old boys match, organized by the Hungarian FA, reunited Puskás with his former teammates.
It was my life's biggest achievement when, as chairman of the Hungarian Football Association, I was finally able to arrange it so Puskás could come home. It was very emotional. Everyone was chanting, "Puskás, Puskás." As we heard this, tears fell down his face, and mine too.
I don't think even Puskás knew how emotionally charged this was going to be. The relief and the love that those players that he played with had for him, and he for them indeed, and indeed the love of the Hungarian public. So it was a wonderful return.
Hungarians could once again celebrate their greatest team, a team that lost once in 6 years, a team that revolutionized football, the first great international side, and one of the greatest ever.
Of course, it's nice for us to say that everything that is good about the beautiful game was developed by Hungarian football. But thankfully, we're not the only ones to say so. Rinus Michels, the father of total football himself, said time and again that the model for his teams was the Hungarian side of the 1950s.
Most people, the man in the street, if you ask them where modern football came from, they probably think it was brown-skinned boys on the Copacabana beach in the mid to late 1950s. It wasn't. It was frozen, Stalinist Eastern Europe. In this nation that was a prison state, in the prison there was a patch of green where 11 men were free. And that's where modern football was invented.
We introduced a new style of football that surprised everyone. Other teams had difficulty in getting away from the WM formation, and they didn't have the players to play with a withdrawn striker like us. Thank goodness we did, because that way we rose to the top of the world.